Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Good evening. My name is Russell Brooks, tonight's host of Inside Scoop. Tonight's program focuses on the effort to restore voting rights for a segment of Virginia's population. I'm speaking of people who were convicted of felonies. As you would expect, they lose their right to vote while incarcerated, but once they have completed their sentence, they do not automatically reclaim that right. The governor in Virginia has the sole authority to restore voting rights. Is this fair? Should this group of Virginians have this right restored once they have paid their debt to society? To help us examine this issue, I am joined by Kenneth Hunter of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy.
Thank you for having me here.
Well, welcome. Let's begin. What is the mission of the Virginia Center for Public Policy?
The Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy is a voice for the voiceless. For the past 40 years, they've advocated for all types of rights for different demographics of the population, from voter initiatives to worker rights to health equity and criminal justice reform.
Now, how did you become involved in criminal justice reform?
I got involved with criminal justice reform because of my experience and my family members' experience with the criminal justice system. More specifically, I did 22 years in the Virginia Department of Corrections for a nonviolent drug offense. I left in 1999. I came home and I was 43 years old. And during that time, when I got the time that I had gotten, I kind of realized that there was something wrong with the system, that it was bigger than me just making a mistake, and it was more about a systemic problem. And it led me to do a lot of research and studying, and I was around some great mentors who basically guided my path into advocacy. And I came home and immediately joined into the advocacy on the outside, and I volunteered for many years. And I finally was speaking at a college, a community college actually, that had a representative from the Virginia Interfaith Center there. And afterwards, she spoke to me and we made some arrangements, and they offered me a position to advocate for different issues in criminal justice reform. Interesting.
How did incarceration affect you?
Wow. So incarceration affected me in a lot of ways. I think it's more than just the trauma. It's very much a traumatic experience, but it also put me on a path to consciousness, political consciousness, and education that has shaped my worldview. So there are various experiences that you go through in 22 years. I had to watch my daughter grow up, who was a month old when I left, and I came home and she was over the age of 21. And so there are years you cannot get back. You know, my family, my parents have aged. I aged.
Sure.
So prison, was a very life-changing experience for me, and I feel that I am very fortunate to have survived it with the wits that I have.
Thank you for that. I'm going to imagine that prior to incarceration, maybe you didn't take a great interest in education, but it sounds as if through that experience in the penal system, you developed a desire to improve yourself. When did you start to take a greater interest in your education?
I think it would be more appropriate for me to say that I didn't take an interest in social awareness. I'm fortunate to have been raised by a family who actually taught me early on to be involved with literacy and to be trained me to be well-spoken, if you will. My father took a lot of pride in that, and so I had education. I don't think I understood the value, though, of secular education. And my experience in prison made me realize so much that I did not know about a society that I was living in, which can be kind of scary at first. But then it's empowering to know that, that you were not aware of certain forces and things that were at play behind the scenes that could affect the trajectory of your life. So I think that that's where I started to understand the value of education in that form, but even further through my 22 years in 1994, briefly, in 1994, the Tough on Crime Act, the Federal Tough on Crime Act, made it so that people incarcerated were not eligible to receive Pell Grants.
Now, is that the sort of three strikes?
Similar. The three strikes law was part of that. President Clinton, President Biden at the time. A lot of people may not know that as much, but that was actually what spurred on this movement of mass incarceration. Mm-hmm. And like I would say, they took away Pell funding, so we went from having around 1,200 programs in different college programs in different prisons across the country to 7 by 1997. Wow. So by the time I got incarcerated in 1999, college programs were non-existent. There was no opportunity to go to college to further your education, or even to plan or prepare for release into a society that would be dependent upon your level of education for economic mobility.
So it's not easy for a person who's incarcerated to increase their education, to develop themselves. What other difficulties did you face, or do other prisoners face?
Well, mind you, once again, 1999. So I left around the advent of the internet. So people, men and women, who have been incarcerated for long periods of time, even nowadays, 2 or 3 years is like 20 or 30 years in technology with how fast things change. So without being connected to society, that is a major obstacle in trying to come home and navigate a world that is ran by the internet. That everything that happens on your phone or through your email. It's a whole different world. No more snail mail and things of that nature. More literally, I did stints in solitary confinement that I'm not certain that I've completely gotten over. There are some torturous conditions in some of Virginia's prisons that we are working to stop now, that we're working to change. And even educational access is something that, we're working on to expand access to college programs. I think that will change the experience for those who are incarcerated, at least in the form of offering them something more qualitative to do with their time. So all kinds of challenges, mental challenges, depression, despondency, poor diets. There's so many obstacles that I overcame, but I think I was able to keep a frame of mind that made me feel victorious.
Great.
In spite of.
Would you say your experience was typical or unusual?
Oh, that's a really good question. I always say that people who are incarcerated are no different than other people, meaning that they're not a monolith. There's not a monolithic way to describe individuals in prison. However, there are a lot of similarities. So I think I had a unique experience based on who I am as a person, but I also think that I shared a lot of the same challenges that people who were incarcerated with me did. The same things that I just mentioned is pretty common amongst individuals who are serving time in prison, whether it's 2 years or 20 years. So yes, I think it was pretty common. Though I had some unique experiences, I still think that most of my challenges and obstacles are probably shared by the majority of individuals who are incarcerated.
What I'm amazed at is that you don't seem like a very bitter person, someone who may have gone through that experience, may not have kept it together as well as you seem to have. So how do you explain the fact that you're not bitter? You have improved yourself. You're looking to help others maybe undertake the same journey.
Big on having a spiritual foundation, understanding, my relationship to God and the world around us, realizing that bitterness served no purpose. I read a Chinese proverb that said, being bitter or angry at someone was like eating a poisonous apple and hoping that it hurt your enemy. So I realized that the people or the forces that I felt like were responsible for my incarceration would not hurt a bit if I were bitter. I would only be hurting myself. And so with that and with family support and friends, it wasn't always smiles, but I was able to be hopeful. And, upon my release, I was thankful. I was thankful that I was able to survive it. I was thankful that I came out with a newfound understanding of the world that I live in. And so, while I wouldn't wish 22 years on my worst enemy, I also feel fortunate that I was able to survive it in the manner that I did.
Inspiring. Was there anything, maybe as you were growing up, that maybe if that had changed somehow, some way, that could have led you to a path that would have avoided some of this?
Part of me could think of some situations
Where did you grow up, by the way?
I grew up in Lynchburg, Virginia. Part of me can think of some, I wish, but my culture teaches me to look at myself for accountability. And that empowers me. It makes me think of that I'm responsible for my decisions. I made the decisions that got me into the positions that I was in. Regardless if I felt like I deserved such a long sentence or not, I ultimately controlled my destiny by decisions that I made, whether in ignorance or not. So, of course, ideally, you wish you would be born wealthy, well off, with all the opportunities in the world. But the majority of us are not being born that way. So I guess that looking forward, you try to change that situation or dynamic for as many people as you can, in hopes that they can avoid walking down the same path that you walk down.
And it sounds like you're doing exactly that. Would you agree?
I am trying my best, yes, sir.
Well, it sounds like you're doing better than that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I'm sure you wish that, again, others who may be following maybe not the best path would have someone like yourself that could offer them some good advice.
Yes, sir. That is our desire. I mean, we are still incarcerating over 20,000 people. So those that are not incarcerated as well as those that are, we want to be able to change their trajectory.
Excellent. Well, I certainly wish you the best of luck. Thank you. We're off to a great start, but we're going to have to pause our conversation for a short break. So please stay with us, and we'll be back with more Inside Scoop in just a moment.
Nice going, Spencer! I can't believe we broke Old Man Hennessy's window.
Correction, dude. You broke. I just threw the ball.
This is really bad. What are we gonna do?
We?
Go to the door, ask for the ball back. Are you serious?
It's my ball, Myrtleback.
You're so dead. I'd run away.
Yeah, to Uruguay.
Kiss your life goodbye. Sorry.
Let's go. Yeah, you never mean you're well.
Nice one. Some friends you are.
Keep smiling, keep shining.
Hi. Tell him it was an accident. And we can fix the window. Come on. I'll come with you.
Loyalty. Pass it on.
You go first.
A message from the Foundation for a Better Life.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Well, it's a matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try. Only you. Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about ripped off life. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Fire.
Awkward. I'm the awkward silence. You try to avoid me, then there I am again.
But an awkward silence can be a great thing.
Like Kelly here is about to demonstrate.
You haven't really been yourself lately. Are you okay?
Find out how you can help a friend with their mental health at seizetheawkward.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again your host.
We're back on Inside Scoop. I'm the host, Russell Brooks, joined by my guest, Kenneth Hunter of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. Let's continue. From your experience, what can be changed or should be changed in the penal system to aid men and women in that system rehabilitate themselves successfully?
Trying to speak for my brothers and sisters who are still incarcerated, there are so many things. In some ways, I wish we did not need a prison system, period. But as long as that we have a prison system in existence and a current need for one, there needs to be a shift in philosophy. Penal philosophy is very punitive, and it focuses on punishment as opposed to rehabilitation. Much more so than some of the rhetoric you would hear that comes out of the Department of Corrections about what they strive to do. We recently just had a public safety hearing about conditions at Red Onion, where 6 guys had intentionally burned themselves just to be removed from that facility where they said they faced daily racism and torturous practices. And I actually spent time at Red Onion myself, albeit 20 years ago, but the same history and allegations were there then and has been since then. And we as a community need to be able to say enough is enough, that we care about how individuals who are incarcerated are treated. 85% of individuals who are in prison will make it home one day. So the way they treat them, it will be incumbent upon how they come back and re-enter society. Like you said, are you bitter? I'm not, but I can think of some people who are, and rightfully so sometimes after some of the things that they have been through. I would like a focus not on making prison into a hotel, but making prison into a place where it is where we have an environment that does exactly what it purports to do, to rehabilitate, to have education readily available, therapeutic programs for individuals who have the same issues that they have been dealing with for many years. A lot of people in prison have mental health issues prior to coming to prison and even after experiencing things like solitary confinement in prison. So proper mental health treatment. And this is in the interest of public safety. You cannot punish your way out of crime. We've never been able to do it. There's no state or locality that was able to punish their way out of crime. Strong punishment and punitive measures have never reduced the crime rate. So we obviously in 2024 need to make a shift in our view of those incarcerated as we understand more about the factors that cause crime, and we realize that people don't just commit crimes because they have a criminal nature. It's a result of some of the conditions that we face, systemic biases and racism in school, and all of our institutions, labor institutions, housing institutions. There are reasons that the prison is filled with individuals that look like myself.
Now, speaking of changing the system, you're working to restore voting rights for felons. Why is this important?
This is extremely important. Having the opportunity to vote is a way of being a part of your community. It's a way of having your voice heard. And I can't really think of a population that should have a deeper interest in who is in office that will pass laws than individuals who are affected by it through incarceration. There are laws that precede incarceration, some unfair, sentencing laws. People care. People in prison are educated. And having them return to society with an opportunity to fully participate in the system will have a lot to say about how they view themselves as members of the community. It is also respectful of the Constitution that says that each one of us, our vote should count, our voice should be heard. Disenfranchisement unfortunately has a lot of racist roots, that this has been an issue that people of color have dealt with since the inception of this country. And yet we continue to see it perpetrated through things like loss of voting rights. I actually came home in 2021, and me getting my rights back was a simple submission. I put my name in and a little other information, and a few days later I had my rights back. Since then, we have a new administration in office, and now you have to jump through hoops, and sometimes you won't even get it then. And it just does not make sense. We are still subjected to the laws, but we have no say-so on who makes those laws or how they're interpreted and executed.
So how important is this particular issue to former felons?
So it's very important. It's very important. It's very important, especially because there's a misconception about the prison population that they don't care, or that they are not invested in that way. And the truth is that when people come to prison, they usually get a little bit more invested than they ever was.
Interesting.
They have time to understand the circumstances of their conditions. And though many may not have voted prior to coming to prison, they will be more inclined to vote once they get released. I'm actually one of them.
People will be surprised by that.
People will be very surprised, and I think that they are a voting bloc that deserves attention. That legislators could one day find themselves courting the population in hopes of garnering the vote of those incarcerated.
Now, how will this right be restored here in Virginia?
It's going to be a process. So we're going to have to, it's a constitutional amendment. And that means it's going to have to be basically voted on twice by two different general assemblies with an election in between, which means this is kind of perfect timing because we have the General Assembly coming up in January of 25, and then we have an election coming up in another General Assembly in 26. So it would be like a great opportunity for us to cross this bridge and address it and get it resolved.
Have other states restored voting rights to felons upon their release?
Yes. Other states have restored votes to felons and voting rights to felons, and there are yet still other states who never take them. There are some states that I'm aware of that you can vote while incarcerated.
While incarcerated?
Yeah. So if I'm not mistaken, it may be Florida. Don't quote me on that. But yes, I'm a proponent that you should never lose your voting rights. Paying your debt to society for a crime, I just don't think it should ever involve disenfranchisement beyond confinement. Your ability to think and make rational decisions and to understand and participate in the system, you don't lose that ability. So why lose that right?
Mm-hmm. Now, what type of public outreach are you doing to persuade others that this issue is important and this system that we have should be changed?
This is a type of that public outreach. Every opportunity that we see to speak to groups, we are an interfaith organization, so we have a great interest and respect for the faith communities. So we visit any and everywhere we can to speak to these congregations. We also are out in the public every opportunity we get to speak to the incarcerated population as well as to legislators. We'll be in the General Assembly this whole session advocating for the passage of this particular bill. We are very vocal, and that is our job, to really talk to people and make them understand why this is an issue and why we need to change it.
And I'm quite certain you received some pushback from certain members of the public. What have you encountered, and how do you respond?
It could be because of who I am and I guess what they will know I represent, but I don't get much pushback. I actually hear a lot of people being supportive of that measure, understanding the value that it will bring to an individual's life, understanding how this can be part of that rehabilitation.
Now, you mentioned it, but I'm going to press you a bit more on it. There has to be a racial element here for those who support the change and those who oppose it. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're absolutely right. All too often, we can trace back things that are unfair and prejudiced and biased to history of racism in this country. There are a lot of people who have gotten beyond it, but there are still a lot of people who feel that way. Whether they knowingly feel that way or whether it's an unconscious bias. But it is certainly something that we have to deal with it, but that's no different than any other institution in which we're fighting for equality or equity in. And so I'm not daunted, and nor should anyone who embarks on any type of journey that involves fighting for the rights of others, because you're going to encounter that anyway.
Sure. What I find most interesting about what you said is that there appears to be a gap in our sense of democracy, in that certain aspects of our population can be deprived of rights. When in a democracy, we should promote as many as people as possible participating fully in that democracy. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. You can certainly comment from your perspective.
Yes, I echo your sentiments. One of our nation's forefathers said that a successful democracy demands an educated people. And so, if you want to have what the definition of democracy is or purports to be, then it is essential that everybody is equally educated. And we're a far cry from that for a variety of reasons. But this is the hope that makes you participate in the system, of hope of being able to ease these conditions, to see change. Our ancestors and forefathers certainly have changed things. It is hard to believe that at one point in this country it was illegal for you and I to read, and yet we've made those steps. So, certainly there's a gap in democracy, and yet slowly but surely we're closing it.
It sounds like some of members of our society who, to some degree, maybe have had the least, are leading the way for us to become an even better, more fulsome democracy.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, it sounds like it's time for another short break. Please stay tuned to this discussion about restoring the voting rights of felons in Virginia when we return with more of our interesting conversation with Kenneth Hunter and more Inside Scoop. Really enjoying this conversation.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we drowned the fire, stirred it, drowned it again, and now just feel if it's cold.
Yeah.
Cool.
Smokey just gave me a bear hug.
I know. I already posted it.
I got a creak in my neck, limp in my step, cramping in my muscles every time I try to flex. But if you throw me love, I'll throw you some more.
It's a big responsibility.
Oh, it's huge. I know, it's huge.
And the salary.
Oh my god, yes.
Right?
I mean, like, I was about to move in with my parents, and right before, so this saved me.
I really believe in you, you know?
Thank you. It's nice to hear that from someone.
These are cool. Did you, what did you...
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Back on Inside Scoop, I'm the host, Russell Brooks, with tonight's guest, Kenneth Hunter of the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy. Let's continue. You were describing your public outreach efforts to push for a constitutional amendment. And you said you've received a variety of reactions. What has been the reaction of Virginia's lawmakers?
Well, we have a degree of bipartisan support. With anything, there's always debate. That's just the nature of democracy, right? But for the most part, we've gotten support. We have patrons and sponsors in both the House and the Senate. But as I said, it's a process. A constitutional amendment is a little different than your typical bill. It's going to take it being voted on the House, I think, and voted in the House and the Senate. I think it's already ready for the floor of the House. It needs to go through the Privileged Elections Committee in the Senate, and it'll be ready for the floor. So hopefully we'll go ahead and get that voted on in this year's General Assembly, and then we'll go through an election year, and then we'll be ready to go up again in the next General Assembly, and we'll get it passed.
Who's the principal sponsor in the House?
In the House, it's Delegate Bennett Parker. In the Senate, it's Senate Mamie Locke.
Okay, all right. Has Governor Youngkin commented on this issue?
No, not to my knowledge. And I'm not certain that his view on it has been too positive quite yet. But because it goes through an election, I don't think it really will matter as much because it's going to have to carry over into the General Assembly after the governor's election next year.
Okay. But next year will be an election year. Mm-hmm. We'll have candidates running for governor. Mm-hmm. Do you expect this to be a major issue in the gubernatorial campaign?
I would hope so. I'm sure we aim to make it that way, as we do with the most of our issues. We want to ask the most of our lawmakers. We want them to support those things that we believe lead to a more equitable society. So it would certainly be good to make that an issue, to find out who indeed is supportive of it, because I think publicly, as a general public, I think we are on board to see this happen. And I think the Commonwealth is ready for it, and I think that's the kind of lawmakers we're going to want to vote into office.
Okay, now that's interesting that you would want it to be a major issue, because oftentimes issues like this that concern maybe the treatment of either people who are incarcerated or those who were incarcerated is really prone to being utilized, exacerbated by those who want these proposals to fail. They're able to inflame emotions among people. And so in that respect, do you worry about that? Are you concerned about how the issue can be misportrayed by those who want it to fail?
Well, this is one of those good things. This bill and the other bill that I'm specifically working to support, which would be the higher education and prison bill, they both have gained bipartisan support, typically. And in my eyes, making it an issue just makes it visible. I would love to hear candidates speak out in support of restoring restoring those voting rights. I would love to see candidates and legislators concerned about the issues that are relevant to those who are formerly incarcerated, that they could be courted as a voting bloc. So I would love for it to be an issue in that regard. But it has gained bipartisan support.
Who are some of the Republicans that are supportive? If you can name them without maybe harming their political fortunes.
I think I'll let them name themselves. I'll stop short of naming a few names, and I'll let them come out publicly when they're ready to support it. Perhaps they'll support it by way of vote.
Okay, but your point is you do have Republicans in the House of Delegates, Republicans in the state Senate, who have expressed their support for this bill.
We absolutely have bipartisan support. Yes.
Okay, all right. So I would hope that they would be forthcoming about that support.
We shall see. A vote speaks volumes, right?
Now, it has to pass, I guess, the two houses twice.
Yes.
Both during this session and the following session, if it is going to be a successful constitutional amendment.
Absolutely.
That seems like a high bar.
That's the nature of our Constitution. And, you know, rightfully so to some degree. There's actually another bill to end, that is striving to end slavery language in our Constitution. The 13th
Slavery
Amendment.
language?
Yeah, so people don't often acknowledge it, but the 13th Amendment says that slavery is legal, and as a punishment for a crime. And so we would like to see a day when slavery is never legal. And, you know, that's a personal endeavor, not something that VICPP has taken on. But that is similar in that it is a constitutional amendment and will have to go through the houses twice in an election year.
Now, this is going off the track a little bit, but I'm really curious about this aspect of slavery being legal. Now, is that connected to the well-known, I guess, prison labor camps or farms that we're familiar with in other places in the South, like a Mississippi, where if I recall correctly, prisoners were oftentimes utilized to do work for local businesses or for farmers. Obviously, prison labor is cheap, and it was an economically beneficial aspect of the economy in those areas. Is that what you're describing, or am I off base?
No, it's actually exactly what I'm describing. Quite often, not as well spoken as you just related, but absolutely. So we can trace the history of prison labor back to convict leasing, which can, of course, be traced back to slavery. Shortly after the Emancipation Proclamation, when those enslaved were freed, convict leasing took form. And convict leasing was like another way of, we call it preservation through transformation. That's actually what Michelle Alexander coined the term, where they were able to preserve the institution of slavery by just changing the name and transforming that institution into a place where actually it was more brutal for enslaved people or formerly enslaved to be at least as a convict, because you were never actually purchased. So you never had real value to even a plantation or a slave owner, because if you died, a new one could be sent in your place. So those conditions reflected as much. That eventually evolved into the prison system as we know it today. And in mass incarceration during that period where we watched the country's prison population triple or actually quadruple, where we make up 5% of the world's population, but we have 25% of the world's prison population, and we have these enterprise activities here in Virginia. We have something called VCE, Virginia Correctional Enterprise, where all of the furniture for universities and for General Assembly legislators are made in these prisons. License plates, eyeglasses, T-shirts, you name it. And like you said, it's cheap labor. It's cheap labor, but it's also exploitation. And we are at a place in 2024, going into 2025, where I think we as a country are beyond slavery, or should be, as a form of punishment. We're better than that, and we can think of better ways to correct those amongst us who need correcting.
So from those comments, it seems that as we examine the state of our penal system, as we consider this issue of voting rights for felons upon their release, it seems like we're just seeing further examples of historic inequities in our criminal justice system. and for minority communities especially, not just minority communities, but for them in particular, I would think they would be pretty exercised and motivated to encourage reform.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, it's systemic. Health equity, housing equity, labor equity, you name it. There is just a disproportionate amount of bias and opposition for persons of color and for those of little means. And we have to figure out a way to overcome that as a society. And those who are in those various categories, the aforementioned categories, need to come together in an effort of unity to hope to change those very things that we're talking about.
Absolutely. Now, most felons are men, I presume. For women, be they incarcerated, released, or women in the general population, have you found that this issue resonates as much with them as it does for the male population?
If not more. You're right. The majority of felons are men. However, women of color are the fastest growing demographic of the prison population.
Interesting.
Little known fact. But women are highly engaged in politics and wanting to be a part, of their community. People who vote are more engaged citizens, right? And there's nothing more engaging for a woman, especially a woman even with children, a woman having to deal with the challenges and biases of being in the labor field or work, education. Women deal with all kinds of biases, and black women at that. So it's a double whammy sometimes for women of color or just women in general. And women are definitely engaged and would like the same rights. And so, like it does appear, especially through the media, you see more about men being returning citizens or formerly incarcerated. But like I said, the demographic of women in prison is a fast-growing part of that population.
I don't think very many people are aware of that, so I think we should thank you for bringing that fact to our attention. Obviously, there's something that needs to be done on their behalf, just as it needs to be done on behalf of men. Well, I think it's time for another short break. So please stay tuned, audience, for this discussion about restoring voting rights of felons in Virginia when we return with more Inside Scoop.
Every day across America, excess food is gathered by a network of good people at local food banks, giving hope to millions of children who struggle with hunger. They've earned their wings, and you can too. Together, we can solve child hunger. Support Feeding America and your local food bank at feedingamerica.org.
Hi, I'm Josh Temple. You might have seen me on TV where I help folks turn their houses into dream homes. But forget construction. Parenting is the toughest job there is. So when you need help or advice, turn to the parenting experts at Boys Town.
I was afraid of that.
Well, guess it's time to get you fixed.
Your pets will start fooling around sooner than you think.
Go on, get out of here!
Accidental litters lead to millions killed in shelters each year. Help prevent more. Fix at month 4.
Food. It nourishes, brings us together, and adds flavor to life. That's why it's important to wash hands, surfaces, and fresh produce. Keep raw meat, poultry, and seafood separate from ready-to-eat foods like fruits and vegetables. And cook to proper temperatures using a food thermometer. Enjoy and refrigerate leftovers within 2 hours. For more tips on safely preparing foods, visit homefoodssafety.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Again, I'm the host, Russell Brooks, with tonight's guest, Kenneth Hunter of Virginia's Interfaith Center for Public Policy. As we discussed, we're coming up on another election year. And for both parties in particular, they're going to be concerned about whether they control or maintain control of the House of Delegates and the State Senate. You're not a politician. I'm not suggesting that you are. But in your opinion, does an outspoken position on this issue help or hurt the parties in their quest for control of the legislative bodies?
Hey, it's an easy answer for me. I think it helps. I think that people support the idea that of individuals participating in the democracy that they live in, and that they have to abide by these rules, laws, and things of that nature. I think that is something that the public would and should and will support. So it has to be a bonus for legislators who are willing to take on an issue like this and courageously step out in support of it.
When you've met with legislators down in Richmond or possibly elsewhere, what do they say they're hearing from their constituents, if their constituents have even heard of this issue?
Well, for the most part, what I've heard from lawmakers is support. I haven't heard much pushback, if any, from lawmakers. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Quite often, I have friendly conversations, and because of that, you may not hear exactly how someone feels, but I am of the mindset of optimism and belief. I believe in this issue as a moral issue, and I believe in the people in the sense that we have a moral compass that lets us know that this is the right thing to do. And if I'm right, then hopefully these lawmakers will listen to the people that they represent, and we will have overwhelming support for such a bill.
Now, if I am a skeptical politician down in Richmond, you come into my office, you sit down. If you want to deliver what we call an elevator pitch, that sort of 1 minute pitch of why I should support your position, what is your elevator pitch?
An elevator pitch. My background is sales, so like I really understand the elevator pitch. However, with me, what I like to do is have a conversation, no matter how brief, without necessarily disclosing what my background is. To have a conversation about this issue or others, even if it's brief, before I even breach the fact that I am formerly incarcerated. The reason why is because I believe in humanizing this issue. And, I've heard quite often that people look at me or talk to me and do not realize my background. In some ways, that feels good.
I'm going to guess that because they have a certain stereotype in mind.
Absolutely.
Of what the formerly incarcerated appears like or sounds like.
Certainly. And people, we all have these unconscious biases. I found myself, reinventing myself daily, learning more about even opposing views on certain things and people's backgrounds and that diversity of this nation. And so, having an opportunity to meet someone who is formerly incarcerated that is not the scary monster that you see portrayed on TV, knowing that individuals who are incarcerated are not a bunch of dumb laborers, that they are capable of deep, complex thought, that they want to contribute to the society that they live in, that you are not your worst mistake or the worst day of your life. We are so much more than that. And every time you have a conversation with someone, you have an opportunity to show that. And, so that is my pitch. My pitch is that is me. I am the person who wants to participate, and people like me, and individuals who are like me, that want to participate in the political process. I had the opportunity to vote in my first presidential election this year. Groundbreaking, and something that I've watched from the sidelines for 20 years with an opinion on who I wanted to see in office, and didn't have an opportunity to do so. So I felt privileged to finally get that opportunity, and there are thousands of individuals like me who would love an opportunity to be engaged in the political process like this.
What do you say to those who were not incarcerated, have the opportunity to vote, the right to vote, maybe I should say, but don't exercise it?
Oh man, I've had this discussion quite often, actually. So there's formal disenfranchisement where someone's voting rights are taken, but there are also people who are disenfranchised with the system, disenchanted rather with the system, and they don't believe in it. And it's difficult to be upset at them, considering the history of this country. And so I understand to some degree, but I also have watched the way things can change. And I encourage individuals to use and take advantage of a right that people died for, and that you take your opportunity to make your voice heard. Most voters don't want to be politicians. And I don't believe that voting means that you believe that men are the end-all answer to solutions. But participating in the political process and being able to change things, even if only momentarily, is certainly worth the effort. And if you don't, you have to ask yourself, how complicit are you in the way that things continue to be? So it's going to take some different activity on the part of people of color, people of lesser means, to get involved in the system that we have a tendency to complain about.
Mm-hmm. Hearing that, I'm going to imagine people will assume that maybe the only issue that the formerly incarcerated are concerned about is the criminal justice system. But I suspect that's not necessarily the case, because you have seen the faults of our overall system or society. You have thoughts, you have opinions on a range of issues that could be, should be addressed.
Yes, educated opinions. Some educated through experience, some through just reading and studying. There's a lot of interconnectedness. In fact, everything is interconnected. And when you understand a particular ordeal you may be dealing with, the deeper you go into the rabbit hole, the farther you'll figure out how deeply entrenched some of these biases are in our everyday lives and in our system itself, and in all of these different institutions. And so you end up, though criminal justice reform may be where you find your home at because of your particular situation, you also start to care about education, the laws that are passed that determine what's being taught in our schools. You care about health equity after dealing with poor health care for so many years and realizing how that can play a part in where we are in life. You care about the workforce. You care about a lot of things that you see will play a role in you reintegrating successfully into society. So certainly, I'm proud to say that, a lot of my friends, they have not been released yet, and I hope that they are soon. But these are some of the deepest thinkers and most intelligent men I've met in my life. And they have something to offer to society, actually at a time when society needs it more than ever.
And very interestingly, you said that they want to contribute to society, that they want to make our society a better place.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why, my primary initiative at Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy is the Virginia Consensus for Higher Education in Prison, which is a consensus aimed at expanding access to college programs for people who are incarcerated. And the reason why I think that is important is an opportunity for individuals to be educated in such a way that they will be able to contribute more meaningfully to society. These people care. These people, a lot of people who are guilty of even crimes in their community are acutely aware of what they've taken from their community and want to give it back, want to give back in some way. I'm actually promoting that one of the courses that we're able to offer through one of the colleges is something that deals with community organizing, that teaches social work and things of that nature, because most individuals are remorseful and want to do better and want to make up for what they feel they may have taken society in their worstest point.
You're a great spokesperson for this bill. Are you optimistic that something can be done, will be done in this legislative session?
I am extremely optimistic. I'm encouraged by the conversations I've had with lawmakers. I am encouraged by the conversations I've had with the general public. And I am very encouraged by the work that we're doing at the Virginia Interfaith Center in Public Policy, knowing how far-reaching it is in our state of Virginia. I have all the hope in the world that this bill will pass successfully in this next General Assembly, and that we'll go through an election and it will pass again in 2026.
Okay. For those who want to be supportive of your efforts, as well as the Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy, what can we do?
The quickest, easy answer is to get you guys to go on our website, Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy.org. Actually, it's the Virginia Interfaith Center.org. And sign up for our newsletters and get the latest and everything that's happening in General Assembly. We keep everybody updated on bill trackers and things of that nature. Also, our other website, which is vchep.org, VCHEP, will be launching on January the 9th. That is another opportunity to support expanding access, which there is a bill for that will be coming up in this General Assembly as well. So come to our website, get aware of the work, attend, spread the word, talk about it. If you support it, tell your friends about it. Talk about it around the holidays. Think about what it'll do to affect and make your community better.
Well, I think we need to have more spokespeople like you out there in the general public.
Thank you.
Well, we have run out of time, but let me thank Kenneth Hunter for joining me tonight. And I'd like to thank the audience as well for tuning in. And please join us again soon for another edition of Inside Scoop. But in the meantime, happy holidays to all, and everyone, have a good night, and go Commanders.